Welcome back, Sebastian here. So this past weekend, of course, Max Verstappen won his third consecutive World Drivers' Championship, and kind of, I guess, starting a series, I would hope, is I want to be talking about each Drivers' Champion right after they won their championship, and talking a bit about how they won their championship, and kind of what contributed to it. So of course, coming into this year, there was hope that Ferrari, Mercedes would make that step and would be able to challenge Red Bull after they basically went unchecked the whole second half of 2022. But I think it became very clear from testing from the opening race in Bahrain that that wasn't the case, that Red Bull had built a brilliant car, and Ferrari and Mercedes had both kind of dropped the ball a bit. So much so that Aston Martin were effectively the second fastest car at the opening race in Bahrain. So it basically became pretty clear early on that it was basically going to be a straight fight between Verstappen and Perez for the title. And I do remember reading at the time, especially after the first 4 races or so, that if Perez had an absolutely monstrous year, like Rosberg in 2016, with a bit of luck, lots of mechanical DNFs for Verstappen, there would be a chance for him to win the championship. And I think there was some, it was a reasonable idea. If he finishes second every race that Verstappen wins, Verstappen has 3 to 5 extra DNFs for poor mechanical reliability or whatever. It would be possible for him to be champion, but of course that's not what happened. So first I want to go through kind of each race head by head and kind of look at where Perez lost the most ground, or I guess conversely where Verstappen made up the most ground on Perez. So season opening race in Bahrain, Verstappen qualified first, won the race obviously. Perez second, finished second, so only a 7-point jump for Verstappen that weekend. So one of Perez's better weekends of the year. Saudi Arabia, Verstappen only qualified 15th, had mechanical issues in qualifying, but really solid recovery drive to second place and fastest lap. Perez basically took pole unopposed. Alonso got pretty close, but in the race kind of led away very easily, and did look very good in the race. Basically managed to hold about a 10-second gap to Verstappen through basically the second half of the race. There was some drama, as I know there was some drama between Perez and Verstappen over who got the fastest lap and going for it. And of course that weekend Perez gained 6 points on Verstappen, so only a 1-point difference overall in the championship. So Australia, this is where things start to go wrong for Perez. Verstappen qualified on pole and won the race pretty clearly. Perez crashed in qualifying, first lap in Q1, beached the car in the gravel in turn 3, I believe, and as a result started from the pit lane. Made his way through the field, had some good overtakes, but wasn't progressing that particularly quickly. He also benefited quite a bit from quite a few of the drivers ahead of him, basically DNFing themselves in that last lap melee that we had. So finishing 5th with fastest lap, probably a little bit better result than he hoped, but Verstappen gained 14 points on him that race. Then we get to Azerbaijan. Verstappen qualified second for the main Grand Prix, third for the sprint, and finished second in the main Grand Prix and third in the sprint. Perez conversely qualified third for the main Grand Prix and second for the sprint, while winning both the sprint and the main Grand Prix. And the people were talking about how this was the start of his challenge. Of course, in the sprint he easily overtook Leclerc to win, whereas Verstappen kind of suffered damage from contact with Russell on the opening lap of that sprint. And then in the main Grand Prix, Perez basically won through strategy. Verstappen was leading pretty comfortably, but a poorly timed safety car basically allowed Perez to make his pit stop under the safety car. So even though they were pretty close on pace, Perez basically took the lead from there. Now, Miami, I think, is definitely the big turning point, as many people will say. Verstappen qualifies 9th, made a mistake on his first run in Q3, second run isn't able to set a lap time because Leclerc basically crashed into the barriers, causing a red flag. They didn't restart the session. Perez qualified on pole, very similar situation to Saudi Arabia, and people were talking about how this was Perez's big chance to take the lead in the championship. However, on race day, that didn't happen. Verstappen had an absolutely amazing race, completely crushed Perez on race pace, won the race easily, took fastest lap, which Perez took second. And even though it was an 8-point gain, this is kind of where a lot of people look at and say this is the turning point in Perez's championship challenge, as it really started to go downhill from here. We get to Monaco. Verstappen pole and win. Perez crashes in qualifying again, starts P20, only gets up to P16. Understandable given how difficult it is to overtake at Monaco. The wet start and then the track basically drying up did not help at all. I believe that's what happened. I don't know. I do remember it was wet, but basically wet Monaco, very, very difficult to overtake. But for that race, a 25-point gain for Verstappen. Then we get to Spain. Pole and win, plus fastest lap, basically perfect weekend for Verstappen. Perez starts 11th, gets knocked out of Q2, and this is kind of where his qualifying struggles really become apparent. The Monaco was because of a crash, but this time he just couldn't get into Q3 on pace. Manages to recover in 4th in the race, but still a 14-point gain for Verstappen. Then we get to Canada, pole and win for Verstappen, very easy weekend. Perez qualifying struggles continue. I remember it was a wet qualifying, and he definitely struggled with the tires. Was on the wrong tires at the wrong time, getting the tires up to temperature. Only qualifies 12th, finishes 6th with fastest lap. Not good enough. I do remember that weekend the Red Bull was not that good in the race. They really struggled with setup, and they only won by like 5 to 10 seconds ahead of Alonso compared to the 20 plus seconds at every other Grand Prix that they had won by. So a bit of a trickier weekend for Red Bull as a whole, but still 16-point gain for Verstappen. Then we get to Austria. Verstappen dominant that weekend. Win, pole in both sprint and qualifying, and then the win in the sprint and in the Grand Prix plus fastest lap for good measure. So basically a perfect weekend for Verstappen. Perez only qualifies 15th. Q2 that weekend. She tried to go for basically a push lap 3 times. All 3 laps were deleted because of track limits. So a really, really rough qualifying session there. Manages to make up for it in the sprint qualifying, qualifies 2nd, finishes 2nd in the sprint. In the main Grand Prix, good recovery drive to 3rd place, but still loses 12 points to Verstappen. Then we get to the British Grand Prix. Pretty good race. Of course, that was kind of the start of McLaren's resurgence. But for Verstappen, pole, win, fastest lap, pretty clear weekend, perfect, 26 points. For Perez, his qualifying struggles continue, and this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5th race in a row out of basically not getting into Q3. Gets up to 6th place, but still loses 18 points to Verstappen that weekend. So this is kind of really where, all the stats about, Hulkenberg has more Q3s, Albon has more Q3s, Albon and Hulkenberg out qualifying Perez, and all those kind of cherry pick stats always start to come out. And, for Perez, compared to the first, basically, 5 races where he qualified 2nd, 1st, crash, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st, this is a massive downturn in qualifying form for him. Then we get to Hungary. Verstappen doesn't get pole for the first time since Miami, qualifies 2nd, but still wins the race and gets fastest lap. Perez finally gets into Q3, only qualifies 9th, but recovers to 3rd place and loses 11 points. Belgium, Verstappen, I believe, qualified on pole, but then had to serve a 5-point grid penalty for a new grid box. Starts 6th, but wins the race. In the sprint, pole and win in the sprint. So basically, in terms of point, only loses the point for fastest lap. For Perez, qualifies, basically moves up to 2nd place because of Verstappen's grid penalty, but still, and then finishes in 2nd in the Grand Prix. Of course, in the sprint, qualified 8th, but then DNF'd after contact with Lewis Hamilton. So this was a 15-point gain for Verstappen. Then we get to the Dutch Grand Prix. Things are starting to look a bit better after Belgium, but still, pole and win for Verstappen. For Perez, 7th place in qualifying, 4th place in the race, so a 13-point loss for Perez. Then we get to Italy. This is probably Perez's most recent decent Grand Prix. 2nd place in qualifying for Verstappen, win. Perez qualifies 5th, finishes 2nd, so only 7-point gain for Verstappen there. Then we get to Singapore. This was obviously Red Bull's kind of bogey race where they were completely off their pace, were probably 5th or 6th best team in qualifying. And, in qualifying, I don't think, given how bad the Red Bull was and how poorly Verstappen did in qualifying. I honestly think Perez's qualifying performance in Singapore was pretty decent. Only 2 places off of him. So for Singapore, Verstappen qualifies 11th, finishes 5th. Perez starts 13th, finished in 8th place. So 6-point gain for Verstappen there. Massive difference in terms of time. I think it was like 30 seconds difference in terms of finishing time, but still not an absolutely awful weekend for Perez. Then we get to Japan and Qatar. Japan, Verstappen qualifies on pole, finishes first and gets fastest lap. Full 26 points there. Perez starts 5th, has that opening lap contact with Hamilton, then DNFs after basically taking out, who was it, Magnussen? Yeah, he took Magnussen out. DNF'd, came back out to serve his penalty, but still 26-point gain for Verstappen there. Then we get to Qatar. Verstappen first in the pole, 3rd place in the sprint qualifying, 1st place plus fastest lap in the main Grand Prix, and then 2nd place in the sprint. So did lose a point in the sprint, but for Perez, he started from the pit lane after qualifying 12th and qualified 8th in the sprint, but then in the main Grand Prix finished his 10th. Basically finished, I think, 11th on the road, but got promoted due to penalties due to other drivers, and of course DNF'd in the sprint. And this was a 32-point gain for Verstappen. So overall, at this point in the season, after the Qatar Grand Prix, 209-point difference between Verstappen and Perez. On track to be the biggest difference in F1 history between 1st and 2nd in the championship. But still, it really shows that even with the first 5 races, Perez was pretty good, doing a pretty good job. But then after that, it basically has gone downhill. And every weekend since Monaco, with the exception of the Dutch Grand Prix, the Italian Grand Prix and the Singapore Grand Prix, it's been a double-digit point increase for Verstappen. And even worse, I think, if you look at races where it's 15 points or more, we got, Monaco, Canada, British Grand Prix, Belgium, Japan, and Qatar. So quite a few weekends where it's more than a 15-point game for Verstappen. So overall, you can really see that Perez has dropped off. And it also coincides with a lot of the tracks that, more traditional European tracks, tracks have generally never suited Perez's driving style compared to those opening races. A lot of tracks that are rear limited, the ones that suit Perez. Now, just to finish up this video, just to go over some stats, Verstappen stats, and kind of looking at milestones that he might be able to look at for the end of this year and for going into next year. So, of course, 2nd youngest triple world champion after Vettel. In addition, 5 rounds remaining, but between basically the championship and the end of, winning the championship and the end of the season, is the most rounds since Michael Schumacher in 2002. Of course, this year he had 10 consecutive wins from Miami all the way to Italy, and that was a new Formula One record. Very likely to get a new points record. I believe his record from last year was 454, and he's currently on 437, I believe. 437, I believe. So very likely to get a new points record with 5 races remaining. Also likely largest winning margin. That's currently held by Sebastian Vettel from 2013, 155 points over Fernando Alonso. In terms of win percentage, he's won 14 races out of 22 races total this season. So basically, including the 5 races that haven't been won yet, that's 63.6%. Highest margin overall is 75%, which I believe was Alberto Ascari. So basically, he needs 3 more wins out of the final 5 races to have the all-time highest winning percentage in a season. Wins in a season, very, very likely. He needs 2 more to set a new record. Of course, the record of 15 he set last year. Poles in a season, this one is still possible, but I think the best he can do is tie the record. So right now he's at 10. If he gets all 5 remaining pole positions, he'll tie Vettel's record from 2011 of 15. Most podiums in a season, currently he's sitting on 16. All-time record is 18 set by himself in 2021. This one looks very, very likely. All he needs is basically 3 more podiums out of the final 5 races. Now, looking at just some milestones, I apologize for the different colors. The marker basically died, so I had to use a different color. So for the all-time wins list, Vettel's currently 3rd with 53, Prost is 4th with 51, and Verstappen is 5th with 49. If he wins, let's see, if he wins all 5 Grand Prix remaining, he would move up to third with 54 wins total, which would be absolutely absolutely amazing considering how many he's gotten this season. I remember people at the beginning of the season saying, oh, maybe if he's lucky he'll get close to Prost and Vettel, but there's no way that he would pass them. But here we are, and he does have a mathematical chance of getting third place on the all-time list. For podiums, this one he can't climb any higher this year, but still he has a very good shot of moving up next year. So 5th is Alonso with 103, 6th is Raikkonen also with 103. Oh no, Alonso's 105, Raikkonen's 103, and then 7th is Verstappen with 93. So 10 podiums off Raikkonen. Of course, Raikkonen will not be adding to that number unless he comes back next year in a shock move. But Alonso, of course, may still be able to improve that total end of this year, continuing into next year. For pole positions, this one he can improve this year. So 5th, tied for 5th on the all-time list is Jim Clark and Alan Prost with 33. 7th is Nigel Mansell, a bit of a surprise seeing that one, 32. And then currently Verstappen is tied for 8th, tied with Rosberg on 30. So of course, if he gets 4 more pole positions out of the remaining 5 races, he would move up to 5th on the all-time list. So that's kind of my video looking at how Verstappen won the 2023 World Championship. Exceptional speed, exceptional consistency. Basically being the dominant car definitely helped and basically made his season much easier than it otherwise would be. And you know, so for next year, I'm really hoping that the other teams, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, maybe even Aston Martin, are really able to take the fight to Verstappen. But I think even if they have a car that's very close or equal, just because of Verstappen's robotic consistency and his ability to maximize results and basically almost never have an off weekend, it will be a very tall ask for any team to challenge Verstappen. So that's all for my video talking about how Verstappen won the 2023 World Championship. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back next time. Goodbye.